What's up, guys? T-Fade here, and this is going to be episode 1 of Ask T-Fade Anything. I was just going through my messenger, and I get a lot of messages every day and a lot of really great questions. I figured I would just go ahead and answer them so the rest of the class gets the answers to some. Maybe some of you guys are wondering the same things, or maybe I can answer some of that stuff for y'all too. So if you have any questions for T-Fade, shoot me a message, leave a comment under this video, and maybe I'll answer one of your questions on the air. Let's get to it. All right. T-Fade. So this is completely hypothetical. If I have a 1500 watt amp and I use 1.0 for power cable, can I use, let's just say, 6 gauge for a ground cable that goes directly from the amp to the frame and is 1 foot long? Technically, yeah, you totally could. Resistance isn't just about the size of the cable, it's also about the length of the run. So a 1 foot run of 6 gauge could technically, I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it could have about the same resistance to handle the same amount of current as a 20 foot run of 1.0 copper. You never know. You just have to run the numbers. They have calculators out there that'll tell you the resistance of a certain size of wire, and you know, as a function of length. So yeah, you could totally do that. I don't advise it, but I mean, if that's all you have laying around, I guess you could totally do that. I usually, it's not the first time I've gotten this question. Like, it's usually 1.0 and 4 gauge, like a 4 gauge ground that's really short. But if you have to mismatch wires, I would probably fuse or use the smaller one as the fused power one, and use the larger one as the ground. But that's just me. I wouldn't mismatch wires, but hey man, you gotta do what you gotta do. Figure it out. Let's see. Box question here. If I did a baffle for the subs and did a port but no back wall of a box, kind of like a ported infinite baffle, would this work? No. That's not gonna work. That is not gonna work. I've actually thought about this before, and just because I think about audio 24 hours a day. Yeah, that's not gonna work. You're gonna need to create some back pressure, and the whole purpose of infinite baffle is to not have any rear wave interference or pressure. So ported infinite baffle, probably not going to work. I wouldn't even waste the wood. All right, was told to look at motor force as BL squared divided by RE. This is a great way to compare apples to apples when you're looking at different subs and motor force. Because if you just look at BL, BL is a function of resistance or impedance, like the coil. Like, the higher the impedance, the higher the BL is going to be. That's why most BL specs are published in series. You know, even though most people run their coils in parallel, but when you run them in series, it looks better on the paper. So if you want to compare apples to apples, like if you're trying to compare between two subs, do BL squared divided by RE, which is resistance, to see which is which. Oh, it's a stock question here. So how come every time I sell a covered call, someone who bought it doesn't sell it back? If this doesn't make any sense to y'all, covered calls, options, talking in the stock market. So if you have 100 shares or something, you can sell a call against those shares using the 100 shares as collateral. And you can sell a call against those shares, basically betting that the stock that you own doesn't get to a certain price. So if I own something that's worth $10 and I sell a $12 covered call, I'm betting it doesn't get to 12. Someone else is paying me, laying a bet down that they will get to $12. The worst that can happen is I get assigned and I have to sell them at $12. No big deal. But anyway, how come the person who bought it doesn't sell it back? They may have. If you buy a call, you have the right to sell that call or exercise it at any time. But you don't have, the person who sold the cover call, you don't have to be the one to buy it back. It's an open market. Options trade just like stocks. So you don't have to be the one to buy it back. So maybe they did sell it, just didn't sell it to you because you didn't bother buying it back, which I don't advise you doing. If you're gonna get a sign, just get a sign. Be done with it. Hey man, do you still have your another stock question? Hey man, do you still have your Robinhood account? And if so, what's some good things to invest in? I'm new to this stuff. Well, everybody was new at some point. I always tell people that are looking to get into the stock market, like if you're brand new and you have no idea, to invest in things that you're interested in. I mean, if you wear Reebok shoes all day, like if that's your favorite brand, invest in some Reebok. You know, if you use nothing but Sony electronics, invest in Sony. Is United your favorite airline? You know what I mean? So invest in things that you are interested in, get some money out there. Time in the market beats timing the market. So just get some money in there, let it get growing, just keep at it, just keep putting money in there, and good things will happen. But yeah, just starting out, find something that you're interested in. If you drive a Ford, buy some Ford stock, man. If you drive a Chevy, buy some GM, you know what I mean? So just to get started, invest in things that are interesting to you and that you use. Hey, had a quick question. If subs that aren't properly loading cause the surrounds to rip. I guess that means if they're not. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If you have a pair of subs in a box and one of them isn't loading the same as the other, it can absolutely unload or load differently and will cause more stress on one than the other. Prime example being if one of the subs is closer to the port, the terminus, like the throat or whatever you want to call it, the inside part of the port. If one of them is closer to the port than the other, it can cause some uneven loading, and it can absolutely add extra stress to those soft parts and cause surrounds to rip, unfortunately. So I suggest, like, especially with just a pair of subs, or you can do this with 4, but usually a small divider in between the 2 subs will help even the loading out. And it doesn't have to be big. Just it's also a good idea for bracing. You put a small divider in between both subs, and it kind of evens the loading out. It won't eliminate it completely, but it's a good idea, and it helps. It helps to even out the loading. Hey, whatever happened to the jelly roll? The jelly roll, I think, is growing mold in Skip's attic right now, I believe. Using a DSP, I don't need to use an EQ, right? Well, it's a weird question because a DSP is usually EQ. I mean, EQ is DSP, digital signal processing. But yeah, most DSPs have EQ built in. So if you have a DSP, you don't need a separate outboard EQ. Normally, even if you have EQ on your head unit, you would just leave it all flat and do all the EQ in the DSP. So technically, I guess the answer is no. If you have a DSP, you don't need an EQ as well in addition. Facebook search failed me. I missed the forums. Me too, brother. Trying to find your loudest ever post and the most titles post. You can find that now on the $150 SPL app. So if you guys are ever wondering who has the most titles ever and who's the loudest people in the world ever, we have both of those lists in the 150 SPL app. So go to 150spl.com and download the app, and then add it to home screen. It's a web app, but it'll come up just like an app on your phone, and you can keep track of that stuff because we update it every time someone does a score over 170 dB or adds another world title to their resume. So, and it also, obviously, we update the leaderboards for the $150 SPL challenge, which, if you don't know what that is, find us on Facebook, $150SPLchallenge.com. We spend $150 trying to get as loud as we can. It's a lot of fun. FU750-12, I know nothing. Will they work great in a sealed box? Well, not specifically to the FU750, but if a really quick way to see if any sub will work well in a sealed, or what kind of enclosure a sub might want, a really quick way to do it is called EBP, efficiency bandwidth product. And the best way, the way you do that is you take FS divided by QES, and it'll give you a number. And in general, anything between say like 40 and 60 sort of works in both. Anything higher than 60 technically will do better in a sealed ported box. Anything lower than that is going to want a sealed box. A lot of people will use one or the other, even though it's not ideal. Like, it'll work, it's going to make noise, it's just not ideal. It'll be peakier, it won't sound as good, but that's a general rule of thumb. If you just on the fly you want to know if something will work in a sealed box, take FS divided by QES, and that is EBP. 40 to 60 kind of works in both. Anything higher than that, it's going to be sort of a ported box woofer. Lower than that, it's going to be a sealed box woofer. And just for reference, the FU750 is in the 50s, so it could technically work in both. I've tried it in sealed, it's okay, it's all right. I was watching a video of a guy measuring with a tape measure distance from the driver's headrest to each speaker. So this is in reference to time alignment. Yeah, that's all you need, man. Tape measure. You don't need anything fancy. It's not hard at all. You just take a tape measure, you measure from each speaker to the listening area, which is generally in the vicinity of the headrest, and that's it. That's all you need to do. Like Pioneer, you just enter the distance in inches, and if you have a DSP that does it in milliseconds, you can go to a website called TraceRight and input the inches, and it'll spit out milliseconds. But a lot of DSPs have inches on them anyway. But yeah, that's it, man. That's really all you need to do. Tape measure. Okay, I hope you don't mind me bothering you again. My little brother's a metalhead, and I'm building him a box using some subs, and we want a small box that plays very flat all the way and way up there too, like 120 hertz, because he listens to metal. We're doing blah blah blah. So the top end extension on a box, it's not really the job of the box, actually. The top end of a sub depends on the inductance of the sub. That's the limiting factor, because the voice coil, the inductance of the voice coil will act like a high pass filter for the sub. So you should probably pay more attention to the sub if you need it to play that high. It's very rare that you want to play your subs up to 120 hertz anyway, because we start to be able to localize sub bass frequencies once they get over around 80 hertz. That's why most subs are crossed over about 80 hertz, because that's when we start to localize them, and when we start getting stereo information. So that's why we can put a sub in the back, a single sub, mono, and we can't really tell where the bass is coming from, because it's omnidirectional at that point. And now if you got upfront subs, like some people, like some SQ guys, you can run them up as high as they'll play, and it's still fine. Especially, obviously, you're going to need stereo subs. But yeah, the box doesn't really. A ported box acts just like, very much like a sealed box above tuning. Like, once you get out of tuning frequencies, a ported box and a sealed box act very, very similar. Very similar characteristics. So that's always kind of aggravated me too. Like, different boxes for different types of music. If you design an enclosure properly, it should be able to play any kind of music that you want. So I never really got that. I know a lot of box designers ask that, like, on their little form or whatever, like, what kind of music do you listen to? Does it matter? Build me an enclosure that plays everything. It's not I mean, unless it's a burp box, but whatever. But yeah, anyway, pay more attention to the sub than the box if you're trying to play that high. Anyway, this is running kind of long already, so I'll end it here. But Ask T-Fade Anything, episode 1 wrapped up. You got a question for me, drop it in the comments, shoot me a message on Facebook, and until next time, peace out, or something. I don't know.